Front live in Kyiv. And Fred, what is the latest on the ground there tonight?
Hi there, Aaron. Well, it was so interesting to see those depleted missile supplies, that graphic that you just showed, because one of the things that we're seeing on the ground here is a lot fewer strikes by the Russians today here in Kyiv and in other places as well. But of course, at the same time, on the front line, the war is still in full swing. Now, you have the Russians gaining some ground in some places in the east, but the Ukrainians making a lot of headway in the south, in the area around Kherson, and that clearly has a lot of pro-Russian officials very worried. Here's what we're learning.
Even as Russia has been bombarding Ukraine with missiles and drones this week, Ukrainian forces have been pushing Moscow's troops back in the south of the country, raising their flag in newly liberated areas like this village called Arkhangelsk.
The boys worked for 6-7 months on liberating Arkhangelsk. They are raising the flag of a free and united Ukraine.
The Kherson region is one of the areas recently illegally annexed by Russia. But Ukraine's army is now advancing so much that Russian-installed officials are asking for civilians to be evacuated to Russian territory.
Because of this, the Kherson administration has decided to organize opportunities for Kherson families to travel to other regions of Russia for leisure and study.
Beat the heat this summer at Cidercade. Cidercade offers fun for the whole family. Just $10 each for unlimited play on over 150 arcade games. That's right, once inside, every game is free. Did we mention we serve the best hard cider in Texas? Bishop Cider.
Kyiv denounced the move, saying Russia is deporting people rather than saving them. Ukraine has vowed to take back all the territory Russia has seized. The country's president said at a celebration for Ukraine's Defenders Day on Friday.
By defeating this enemy, we will respond to all enemies who encroached on Ukraine, on those who lived, and who will live on our land. This will be a victory for all our people.
But in the east, a different story. Civilians fleeing the Russian advance on the industrial town of Bakhmut. The charge being led by Wagner, the private military company headed by the man known as Putin's chef, Yevgeny Prigozhin. These photos showing Wagner troops on the ground in the areas surrounding Bakhmut. On social media, Prigozhin announced Thursday that Wagner forces have taken a small town on the outskirts of the city. The Wagner Group has established complete control over Ivangrad, he said. I want to emphasize that there was not a single person from other units except the employees of Wagner Group in Ivangrad. Wagner has long been known for brutal tactics. CNN has unearthed evidence of the group's mercenaries committing massacres on civilians in Libya, Sudan, Mozambique, and the Central African Republic. Recently, Wagner and Prigozhin have dropped their shadowy veil. Prigozhin himself seen recruiting convicts in prisons, admitting he owns Wagner, and even attending funerals of one of his fallen fighters. Wagner units have already been prominently involved in Russia's campaign in Ukraine. It seems they are now the spearhead of Vladimir Putin's invasion force.
And Aaron, you just saw that statement by Yevgeny Prigozhin emphasizing that it was only Wagner soldiers or Wagner troops who were near that town of Bakhmut. There are a lot of people who believe that right now Yevgeny Prigozhin of Wagner is trying to orchestrate a power grab in Moscow, that he's trying to help possibly oust the defense minister of Russia, as obviously Russia's campaign is going very badly, and himself grab power among those under Vladimir Putin. Aaron.
All right, thank you very much, Fred Pleitgen. I want to go now to the former CIA Director John Brennan, author of the book Undaunted, My Fight Against America's Enemies at Home and Abroad. And Director, let me just start with Fred's reporting on the Wagner Group, that you have this power play, he's saying, with the leader there trying to challenge Putin's defense ministry, maybe get rid of Shoigu and take over, and described as the spearhead now of the Russian war effort. What do you read into that?
Well, I think, Aaron, as was reported, the Russians have done so poorly on the battlefield that I think Putin is looking for some new options to be able to push the Ukrainians back. And tapping into the Wagner Group which, as was noted, is a very brutal organization, paramilitary. They probably have 8 to 10,000 or so paramilitary troops. And I do think that there is some jockeying among the various senior leaders of Russia right now, trying to take command and control. And because they have done so poorly. Just last weekend, Putin appointed the butcher of Syria, General Dvornikov, who really engaged in some brutal tactics and massive attacks and assaults inside of Syria. So I do think as Putin's options are narrowing and as the Russian forces are doing so poorly on the battlefield, especially in Kherson, they've been there for about 6 months. And that's a major strategic objective. The fact that they weren't able to fortify it enough to be able to withstand a Ukrainian assault, I think, is really telling of just how incompetent they are.
Well, I mean, it's also, I know you have had the chance to meet with many who know Putin and are close to Putin, but when you hear about a power grab and someone trying to get rid of his defense minister, I mean, it does raise bigger questions. From the people that you've met and seen operate around Putin, do you think that, whether it's because they want more action or less action, that there could be a real threat to Putin himself?
Well, I think increasingly Putin is seeing this conflict as quite existential to his political survival. I don't think there's any way that he will survive this if he isn't able to credibly claim victory in Ukraine. And the people around him, the Gerasimov, who's the head of the general staff, Shoigu, the defense minister you mentioned, Bortnikov, the head of the FSB, the intelligence service, Patrushev, who's their security advisor. I mean, these are people, I think, that are very worried, but they know that they're also in the accountability bucket. And so it's a question of whether or not somebody may try to make a move somehow against Putin, but he does have a monopoly on power. And so, therefore, I think the next several weeks and a couple of months, I think, are going to be very dynamic and very, I think, telling of where this conflict is going to go.
So I was talking about just the incredible dire straits, right? 86% of the Iskander missiles are gone, right? I mean, just of the conventional missiles, and obviously, there's the nuclear elephant in the room. But we're also seeing the video that I showed of draft officers waiting in the lobby of an apartment building to grab men. And when these recent recruits end up out in the field, and some of them are ending up on the front lines incredibly quickly, we're hearing from some of them. Let me just play some of it.
We've got this shit for training. Knows what kind of house we're at. 3 armor-piercing cartridges. We're in Svatov, you guys. What region? Luhansk region. We are mobilized. We don't have to be here at all. 11 days from when we were deployed. We left Moscow 11 days ago. How many times did you shoot already? Once. 3 bullet cartridges.
11 days from draft to front line, 1 training, 3 bullet cartridges. That's what they're saying in that video. There's a lot more where that came from. Does that shock you?
No, Putin says that he has deployed 16,000 of these conscripts over the past couple of weeks since the partial mobilization went into effect. It's my understanding that a lot of the Russians who go into the Ukraine, unfortunately, they're going to become cannon fodder. But the number of desertions really has increased and is being very much underreported. And that's why I do think he's opting for some of these other groups, the Wagner Group and others, because I think the lack of training, the lack of capability of these Russian civilians who have been pressed into service, I think it just demonstrates just how desperate Putin is to try to claim some type of progress in the battlefield.
And we use Next Insurance. Let's try that again. Hey everyone, it's Mike Andes, founder of Augusta Lawn Care. We have 100 locations around North America, and today we're talking about Next Insurance. Not many people know this, but I was actually an insurance agent before I started my lawn care business. I know what makes a good policy, and I know what coverages you need in your business to stay protected. Thanks to Next Insurance, I don't have to be a landscaper and a lawyer to run my small business. In fact, I used Next last week to insure one of our newest Augusta Lawn Care locations. In 12 minutes, I was able to customize my coverages and paid for my first month. Better yet, it saved me 20% compared to another insurance agent that gave me a quote. And they took 3 days to get back to me. And don't be worried about getting stuck in some long contract. You can cancel anytime.